Researchers tracked older adults for over 2 decades, and the people who ate eggs didn't just have better memories, they had visibly less wear and tear on their brain tissue. That is because every time you forget a name, lose your keys, or lose focus, your brain hasn't stopped working. It has just run out of the chemical bags it needs to send messages. Today, we are going to look at exactly what happens inside your brain and body when you eat boiled eggs first thing in the morning. Because the raw material your brain uses to build those bags comes down to one specific ingredient. There's a nutrient sitting inside that egg that never made it onto the nutrition label at all. Pick up almost any food packet in your kitchen and turn it over. You will see protein, fat, sodium, sugar, and a few vitamins listed in neat little rows. What you will not find anywhere on that box is a nutrient called choline. That is not because it is a minor player. It sits on the official list of essential nutrients, right beside vitamin C and iron. It just arrived late. It was not formally recognized by health boards until the late 1990s, decades after those standard food labels were designed, and nobody ever went back to update the packaging. So you have a nutrient your brain cannot function without, invisible in the one place most people actually look for health information. Your liver does make a small amount of it on its own, but never enough to cover your daily needs. The rest has to come from food, and food is where the problem starts. As people get older, their intake of this nutrient drops steadily. Adults past the age of 50 average roughly half the recommended daily amount. That is the same stretch of life when people start noticing names slipping from their memory and words taking a few extra seconds to arrive in conversation. What this nutrient does is simple, and you do not need a medical degree to follow it. Picture your brain as a busy post office. Every time you want to move your arm, or remember where you left your keys, or focus on a book, your brain has to send a letter across a gap to make that happen. The chemical that carries those messages is built directly from choline. If you do not have enough of it, the post office runs out of mail bags. It does not matter how sharp the postmaster is. With no bags to carry the mail, messages get delayed. And your brain does not keep a pile of spare mail bags in a back room. It has to mix a fresh batch every single day, pulling from whatever you have just eaten. 2 large boiled eggs give you over half your target amount for the entire day, from something that costs pennies and takes 10 minutes to prepare. But there is a catch, and this one detail decides whether you get any benefit at all. Nearly all of that choline sits in the yellow center. The egg white is protein and water. It is good protein, but when it comes to feeding your brain, an egg white omelet gives you close to nothing. Which means all those decades of advice about separating eggs and tossing the yolks did not just remove a few calories. It removed the entire reason eggs show up in memory research in the first place. The same goes for the yellow pigments in the yolk that collect at the back of your eye. Those pigments work like a pair of internal sunglasses, protecting your vision as you age. They are found in the yolk and nowhere else. But numbers on a page are one thing. Watching what happens to real people living their lives over many years tells a better story. In eastern Finland, researchers ran a long-running project, the Heart Disease Risk Factor Study. They followed over 2,000 middle-aged and older men for more than 2 decades. They did not just ask them what they ate once. They tracked their diets and then watched what happened to their memory and thinking skills over 22 years. The men who ate eggs regularly did not only perform better on memory and cognitive tests, their overall risk of developing memory-related disease came out lower than the men who avoided them. Now, both of those studies watch what people already do on their own. The tougher test is to hand people the nutrient on purpose and see what changes. In 2023, a group of middle-aged and older adults in Japan took part in exactly that kind of trial. For 12 weeks, one half of them took 300 milligrams of choline pulled from egg yolk every day. The other half took a dummy pill, and nobody knew which group they were in. By the end, the yolk group had more free choline circulating in their blood, and they scored better on tests of verbal memory. And your head is not the only place that nutrient ends up. The same choline travels down to your liver and does a job that has nothing to do with memory. Your liver is the filter for everything you eat and drink. As people get older, small amounts of fat can start settling inside that filter. Nothing sudden. It just slows the organ down, and a slow liver is one of the quieter reasons people feel tired all day without ever finding a cause for it. Choline is what moves that fat back out. It attaches to the fat sitting in the liver tissue, packs it up, and sends it out through the bloodstream to be burned off somewhere else. Without enough choline, that fat has no exit. It stays where it is and keeps piling up in the dark. This is not a fringe idea either. When researchers want to study a fatty liver in the laboratory, one of the standard ways to create one is to remove choline from the diet. Take the nutrient away and the fat starts collecting. Put it back and it starts leaving. 2 boiled eggs in the morning is one of the simplest ways to keep that exit open. But when you eat those eggs, and what you eat them before, shapes how much of it you actually feel. Start with the obvious part that most people skip past. You have just come off 8 or 9 hours without food. Your stomach is empty, and an empty stomach moves things along quickly. Protein eaten into that gap goes straight through and reaches your bloodstream without waiting in a queue behind whatever else you put in first. Your body has been running on its overnight reserves. This is the first delivery of the day, and nothing is standing in front of it. Then there is the order effect, and this one is measurable. When protein and fat arrive before carbohydrate, they slow down the rate at which everything behind them leaves the stomach. Researchers have tested this directly by feeding people the same meal in a different sequence. Protein first, carbohydrate second, and the blood sugar rise that follows is noticeably flatter than the identical food eaten the other way round. So, 2 boiled eggs before your toast is not the same event as 2 boiled eggs after it. Same eggs, same bread, different morning. There is also the plain practical reason. Breakfast is usually the one meal you actually control. By noon, your day belongs to other people. Your job, traffic, whoever else is in the kitchen. If you are going to close a gap in your nutrition, the morning is where it realistically gets done. And there is a knock-on effect. A typical breakfast of cereal or toast behaves like a sheet of newspaper thrown into a fireplace. It flares up bright and hot, gives you a quick burst, and 10 minutes later it is gone, leaving you cold and hunting for more fuel. That is your mid-morning crash. Boiled eggs are the thick, dense log on that same fire, slow and steady. Researchers tested this directly. They took groups of adults and gave them different breakfasts. One group got a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast, like a bagel. The other got eggs. Both meals carried the same number of calories. The egg group had much lower levels of the hunger hormone, ghrelin, for the rest of the day. They naturally felt fuller. They ate less at lunch, had fewer cravings in the afternoon, and their blood sugar stayed level. One decision at 7 in the morning was still steering their appetite 12 hours later. That is the real morning advantage. It steadies the whole day. But if you eat those 2 eggs sitting alone on a bare plate, you are leaving something behind. Eating first does not have to mean eating nothing else. Somewhere along the way, the advice picked up a rule that the eggs must sit by themselves on an empty plate, and that rule costs you. Researchers at Iowa State University tested exactly this. They wanted to see how the body absorbs vitamins from vegetables. They had people eat a bowl of colorful raw vegetables, tomatoes and carrots and the like. When people ate that salad plain, their bodies absorbed only a small fraction of the vitamins. Then they added cooked whole eggs to the same bowl of vegetables. Absorption of those plant vitamins climbed up to 8 times higher. The fat in the egg yolk works like a taxicab. Many of the best vitamins in our food cannot travel into your bloodstream on their own. They need fat to carry them across. Eating your boiled eggs completely alone leaves those taxicabs sitting empty. So the meal that gets the most out of 2 boiled eggs is not 2 boiled eggs on a bare plate. It is 2 boiled eggs next to something colorful, a handful of spinach, a few sliced tomatoes. There is also a loud crowd online cracking raw eggs into their morning shakes, convinced that cooking ruins the nutrition. Tests using tagged proteins show what really happens when you do that. Eat a cooked egg, and your body uses about 91% of the protein. Eat that same egg raw, and your body uses about half. The rest passes straight through you. Heat changes the shape of the protein, unfolding it so your digestive system can get at it. It also disarms natural compounds in the raw white that block digestion. Cooking does not damage the food. It opens it up. As for why boiling beats frying, it is quiet math. Boiling uses no added oil, adds no extra calories, and the gentle heat protects the fats inside the yolk from breaking down. You can also cook a whole batch on Sunday evening and not think about breakfast again until Thursday. There is one adjustment worth making, though. 2 large eggs give you roughly 12 to 13 grams of protein. That is fine when you are 25, but once you cross 40, your body becomes less responsive to protein. It needs a louder signal to hold on to your muscle. You need closer to 30 grams in one sitting before that signal fires properly. So 2 eggs on their own is about half a dose for an older adult. Add a 3rd egg, or a side of Greek yogurt, or a piece of cheese. Do not let 2 eggs be your whole morning meal if your goal is keeping your strength as you age. And that protein is not only about muscle. Muscle and bone thin out together. It starts somewhere in your 30s and moves slowly enough that nobody notices for 20 years. Then it shows up all at once as a weak grip, a loss of balance, and a fall that takes 6 months to recover from. Eggs cover both halves of that problem. The protein carries the full set of amino acids your body uses to repair muscle fibers after an ordinary day of moving around. And the yolk is one of the few foods that naturally contains vitamin D. That part matters more than most people realize, because calcium on its own does very little. Vitamin D is what allows your gut to actually absorb it. Without it, you can drink milk all day and most of that calcium walks straight out of you instead of reaching the bone. In studies on older adults, the people getting complete protein and vitamin D together held on to their bone density and their strength better than the people getting one without the other. That is what independence looks like at 75. On the cholesterol worry, the picture is clearer today than the warning most of us grew up with. Picture your blood vessels as a moving river. The harmful cholesterol behaves like sticky mud along the banks, slowly narrowing the channel. For years, people assumed eating yolks was just dumping more mud into the water. Controlled feeding studies point the other way. In most people, blood levels barely move when they eat more eggs because the liver simply makes less of its own to keep things balanced. Even in the smaller group who do see a rise, the good and bad numbers tend to rise together, which keeps the ratio safe. And that good cholesterol is not a passenger. It works like sponges drifting down the river, picking up what has settled on the banks and carrying it out of the body. The fats in the yolk also change the size of the harmful particles, turning small, dense ones that lodge easily into larger, lighter ones that float past without catching. Long-running studies following adults who ate eggs regularly have not turned up the higher heart risk everyone expected to find. What you fry your food in, and the sugary things you eat beside it, matter far more to your heart than the eggs. If you already have a diagnosed condition, that one is a conversation for your doctor. And to be clear, no food is a shield. Eggs do not prevent dementia on their own. 2 or 3 boiled eggs, yolks included, most mornings, eaten first, before the bread and before the sugar, while your stomach is still empty from the night. Something colorful beside them so that fat has vitamins to carry. A second protein source if you are past 40. None of that is complicated. It works because a real shortfall, the kind that turns up on memory tests and brain scans, gets closed by a food already sitting in your refrigerator, eaten at the 1 hour of the day you still control. And the only reason it went missing is that an entire generation was told to throw away the better half of it. If you spent years separating out yolks and eating dry whites, that was never your fault. That was the printed advice, repeated everywhere, for decades. So tell me in the comments, did you go through an egg white only phase? And if you are over 50, how many times has the official advice on eggs flipped in your lifetime? I have a feeling the real number is higher than any of us can remember.